Welcome to What the Health, an independent approach to your health span. Have you noticed how our healthcare system may not have your best interest in mind? Join Dr. Eckel in this fun and sometimes disturbing exploration of the state of healthcare and what it means for you. Now, here's your host, Dr. Eckel.
All right, welcome back, everybody. I am Dr. Greg Eckel, and this is What the Health. I have Brodie Welch, our licensed acupuncturist, on board today, and we're talking Chinese medicine for increasing your longevity. And I am really looking forward to this conversation. I want to give you a proper introduction, Brodie. You're board certified herbalist, self-care strategist. She helps self-aware, high-achieving women break the cycle of stress, overwhelm, and self-sabotage so that you can enjoy your lives, so you're not working so hard to create truly embody self-respect. Working at the confluence of wellness and personal development, she's helped thousands of clients optimize their weight, digestion, hormones, sleep, mood, and vitality. Lifelong student of consciousness, which I'm excited to get in on that. Brodie has been practicing meditation, yoga, and Qigong for over 20 years, holds a teaching certificate in each one of those topics. She synthesizes ancient techniques from Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, and yoga with the latest research in neuroscience, functional medicine, and habit change to help her clients thrive. Welcome aboard, Brodie.
I'm really excited to be talking to you today. Thanks so much for having me.
You are so welcome. And this one, near and dear, longevity, and really using the ancient medicine of Chinese medicine. So, it's a kind of a newer topic on What the Health. So, let's start very broad, and then we're going to go granular. So in big brushstrokes, like, what is Chinese medicine and what does it have us to teach about longevity?
Well, that's a great place to start, because a lot of people that hear Chinese medicine and they might think herbs or they might think acupuncture, but really what we're talking about is this complete system of healthcare that's been on the planet for thousands of years, that has its own internal logic and its own internal system of diagnosis, but it's really rooted in, like, how can we increase our health span for as long as we're alive, right? Like, how can we stay alive and vital? And so the branches of Chinese medicine, we've got acupuncture as probably the sexiest branch. We have Chinese herbal medicine. We also have things like lifestyle and diet, exercise. And by that, the Chinese did not mean pumping iron at the gym. It meant Qigong, right? This breathing and moving meditation, body work, right? The idea of using the same energy channels that we might needle as acupuncturists, but affecting them with our hands, with pressure. And so really, there are all these branches of the medicine. Any one of them can be used to steer us in the direction of health or imbalance, really. That if we think about health not as just the absence of disease as we might define it in allopathic medicine, like, really, if you think about, like, what is health in Western medicine, it's like, well, you're not sick, right? You don't have this disease that we can diagnose. And in Chinese medicine, it's not this binary health or disease. There's a whole spectrum of imbalance along the way. So it's the kind of thing where if all the systems are connected, our mind, body, spirit are connected, our digestive system is connected to our reproductive system, is connected to our hormones, is connected to all these, just that you can't compartmentalize in Chinese medicine. Everything affects everything, like a big game of rock, paper, scissors. And so there's this idea that really that you have to be steering in the direction of health with your daily actions, or things are going to go off the rails. There's a saying in Chinese that it's 3 parts medicine, 7 parts nourishing health. And that's what adds up to us feeling good, right? And it's you don't get well in the doctor's office, you don't get well at your naturopaths, you get well in the really granular basics of how you're living everyday life, rooted in this philosophy of balance, right? We think about yin and yang as these terms that most people are familiar with, the black and white swirls with the little bit of the dots of the opposite color, representing the fact that really, like, life is about this union of opposites, this duality, that you can't have great energy without great rest. You can't have, that really there's, I mean, really everything in the universe that we can observe can be broken down into a yin or a yang component. And this idea that they actually support each other in addition to opposing each other, and really so much of how we create health is about creating balance between yin and yang.
I love that. I love that you bring in the symbol of yin and yang at the very beginning of this discussion, because it is so true. We've got this like really ancient symbol that is so eloquent and sums up that whole aspect of balance. So on maybe give some examples of yin and yang for folks, because that while it's very common vernacular for you and I, because we live in that world,
right?
It number one, I love it that we're going to really set the record straight this year on pronouncing the words properly for us in North America with yin and yang. So I love that. So yeah, give us some examples of those, because that I think really gives us, that'll set the stage for where we go today.
Sure. Well, if we think about really nothing is purely yin or yang. Everything is both. But if we're going to break it down into just some general, like that, so they're relative terms that only exist in relationship to one another. So if we're going to have hot as yang, cold would be yin. If we're going to have active and moving and transforming and busy, that's all yang, as opposed to the still, the calm, the nourishing, the restorative, the rejuvenating is the yin. So in our daily lives, like we can think about daytime as yang, right? When we're active and moving and busy and doing stuff, and that nighttime is yin. It's the cool, right? Everything cools down. It gets dark. We're supposed to be resting. We're supposed to be sleeping. And just if we think about what our society values, right? Our society values speed, productivity, getting things done, doing more and doing it in less time and doing it faster. That's yang, right? We're not a society that really values like, what does it feel like? Let's slow down. Let's take a rest when we're tired, right? Honoring the yin is akin to laziness, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's so many of us get the message that yin is useless and yang is what matters. And so is it any wonder that we are burnt out, right? That we're burning the candle at both ends, and we end up, sapping our adrenals. We end up exhausted and then really unable to, or the wired tired effect, where we're not really able to get rejuvenative sleep, where we are too stressed out to digest our food, right? If we can think about the nervous system, there's a yin and a yang to that, right? If the yang aspect of our nervous system, when we go into fight or flight mode, we're going to try to flee from a predator or fight one off. And that's like adrenaline, it's yang, it's cortisol, it gets us, the blood flowing to our extremities. It gets us ready to be active. It takes us completely out of the rest and repair, rest and digest functions that we need in order to just maintain. So our, ability to fight off diseases or mend a cut that we might have in our skin, or digest our breakfast, or have a healthy menstrual cycle, or like all of that, the body stops prioritizing the maintenance functions, the yin mode, when we go screaming into yang mode all the time, right? We can really only be in one or the other. And that idea of again, we are so many problems in our society and in our bodies result from us spending way too much time in what should be reserved for emergencies, or at least much more balanced than it is, right? So that's sort of, so if we think about
that. Yeah, it's the components that I think about with that balance, and in this really couching it in a longevity discussion, and how Chinese medicine views aging as well. That balance is so important for folks, because it seems, especially in the longevity area, I find it very yang, right? It was like mainly at the beginning in modern, like in the last decade or so, it's been men really pushing the bounds of like, how big can they get? Like biohacking is kind of in that longevity discussion. And we're not going to find it in a bottle, right? Like we're not going to find that solution in, let's take more NAD, or it's peptides, or whatever the thing is, that really couching it in this balanced way of following nature. And really the component that I love about Chinese medicine is it's really environmentally based. It puts us in right relation in the universe, right? There's the heavens, the earth, and humans in the middle path. And it's couched like from all of the discussion and the languaging around it and symbolized by that yin yang symbol. So in the longevity realm, how do you see Chinese medicine really as the platform? I see it as a platform. I'm really excited to hear how you see it as a platform in really healthy aging and longevity.
Well, I really feel like it's the original biohacking, right? The idea of like, how do we optimize our bodies? Yet that you're 100% spot on with I think just the notion that Chinese medicine, one of its major strengths is this idea that we're connected to nature, right? That we're not separate from it. We are connected to it. And nature follows rhythms and cycles. And that really, it's like life is so much easier when we're living in rhythm, right? When we're going with the flow, literally going with the flow of nature, when we are, and again, like life is, all of life is predicated on this spanda in yoga terminology, or this interplay between yin and yang, right? That there's from the lub dub of the heartbeat to the inhale and exhaling of the lungs to, the taking in food and it's got to come out, like there's everything has this sort of taking in and letting go, active and passive interplay, then and the cycle of the seasons, right? Going from the relative stillness and quiet and inward nature of winter to the vital, outward, hot, expressive area of summer. And really it's like that all of life, right, is it's birth, growth, maturity, decline, and death in this cycle. And so how do we go through this cycle smoothly, right? Like that's one of the questions Chinese medicine is interested in, is that that basically if there has to be this balance of yin and yang, and we can look to nature to figure out kind of like what we should be doing with our lives and what we should be eating at a different time of year, right? We should be eating differently in the summer than in the winter, right? That we literally don't have the enzymes in the winter that we do in the summer, things like that. But the notion of, so in other words, nature teaches us a lot of things, and among the things that I think it teaches us, is that there is this balance of day and night, of activity and rest, which a lot of people get wrong. There's also, in Chinese medicine, there's 3 causes of disease, and one of them is the emotions. Right. Like there's that. And so this idea that getting a handle on our stress, getting a handle on our minds and emotions, and in Chinese medicine, the word is cultivating, right? That having a meditation practice, having a Qigong practice, a meditation in motion, or a yoga practice where we are in tune with our breath and our bodies, because it's energy, right? If everything in our bodies is energy and energy needs to flow, then the emotions the emotions are the spice of life. There's nothing wrong with them, but there is definitely something wrong when we repress them. Like, oh, I'm a machine, right? I'm in biohacking optimization mode. I'm productive from 8 to 5, and and all that. Therefore, I'm going to shut off my humanity and just be a mind. It's like, yeah, that's way too young, right? Like that's not allowing the free flow of what comes up organically as a human being, right? Denying the fact that you have emotions, not so good, right? That means that we're repressing that kind of energy, and that's going to come out sideways. It's going to stress us out. It's going to give us what we call liver qi stagnation in Chinese medicine. Similarly, letting ourselves be carried away with the overexpression of emotion, letting our minds get too attached to an outcome such that we are perpetually angry or perpetually sad or perpetually whatever. It's like that's also not a great way to live. It's a way of wasting a lot of vital resources. And so this notion in Chinese medicine of balance and moderation, like not only moderation in terms of what are we eating and drinking, but moderation in terms of our thoughts and emotions, right? That is staying in this middle path and being able to feel it, let it come up and move through us, right? In other words, channeling our inner toddler who's like able to just feel what they're feeling, not repress it, let it go completely. That's the kind of thing that I don't see a lot of my patients doing, right? Like that, because again, of this cultural sort of taboo against yin, right? That it's all got to be like sort of shoved down, that we can pretend that we're these productivity robots. Or for so many of us, right, we are taught, especially I see a lot of women, and especially a lot of women who have, especially in the COVID era, greater responsibility for taking care of the kids or the aging parents or whoever it is. And that notion that like, oh yeah, you're also supposed to get your work done. You're also supposed to, that take care of everybody else first and put yourself last. And yeah, you don't really need sleep. You don't really need, good nutrition. You can just feel like, throwing down some toast every once in a while. It's like, yeah, that's not true nourishment. It's not getting us to that point of being able to feel, well, yeah, I'm going to use the word again, truly nourished by our lives, because, that it's a recipe for depletion to be constantly putting everyone else's needs before our own, and not recognizing that just the simple basics that we all know that we need to do to stay healthy, it's so easy to shove those to the back burner. And so I love that Chinese medicine is like, no, actually, these things that we all know that all of the top health experts in literally any field are going to say are important, right? Get good sleep, eat nourishing food, move your body, have, manage your stress. A few others from Chinese medicine that might be not out there is making sure that you're out in nature, right? Enjoying time connected to nature. And also having a healthy and rewarding sex life. Like that's another thing that Chinese medicine says taps us into our vitality. Obviously we can go too far and that's depleting, but that being part of something that is a connection to your body, that can be a connection to intimacy and a connection to joy. A connection to joy, I think in general, is another sort of missing piece in modern society, right? So many of us put it at the very bottom of the list, and we feel like we have to earn our right to enjoy our lives. And I would love to see that flipped upside down, right? That where we really spend time each day prioritizing something that makes us come alive, like that gets us in touch with our vitality. Because I think we'd all agree that what's the point of living to 110 if you're going to feel like completely drained of life, vitality, and joy, right? I mean, like that.
You're giving me chills. You're giving me chills with that. I love it. Yeah, because so in that emotion, so a couple things, because that's awesome. And I love like that we do need more joy and bliss in this world. And it's our responsibility to actually bring it. And I've been asking patients like, what brings you joy? And they're, this day and age, people have a hard time answering that. They don't know.
Yeah.
And you don't know. So joy, what that emotion is associated with what organ in Chinese medicine?
It's the heart. And, that it's joy and contentment, right? If we think about joy as kind of the yang version, I think of contentment as the yin version of joy, the ability to just be appreciative of the present moment. So joy doesn't have to look like, being, blissed out at a rock concert, or, it doesn't have to be this big thing. It can be a quiet cup of tea in a garden. It can be petting a cat. It can be something that is really just a sweet moment where you feel content with your life. And those kinds of things are often, that it's like most of us don't really have to take up a hobby and be productive in our pursuit of joy, right? These moments are accessible. They're right here if we let them be, right? Or it can be having a heartfelt conversation with a friend, connection, right? As I'm sure you're aware, but something that a lot of my patients are surprised by, especially for women, that loneliness is a huge risk factor for all causes of death, right? It's as risky as smoking 10 cigarettes a day. Yeah. So this idea of cultivating the heart's connection to other hearts on the planet, increasing our oxytocin, which of course then helps take down our cortisol levels, helps us manage our stress, and helps us engage in that tend and befriend response, which women tend to be hardwired for in terms of how we manage stress as a species, right? We're the ones making sure after the lion attacks the village that everybody's okay, everybody's breathing, tending to the injured. And so it can be that just calling a friend and checking in on them and like, hey, how are you doing? This pandemic is rough, right? That in that process of tending and befriending, we actually have the opportunity to open our hearts to a heartfelt connection with someone else. And the heart in Chinese medicine, of course, is considered the emperor, the ruler of the body. And one of the jobs of the heart is to integrate all of the emotions, and it's to be kind of like the conductor of the orchestra that makes it all coordinate in a smooth, organized way. So if the heart isn't getting the attention it deserves, again, it's hard to feel vital and healthy.
Yeah, that here. I mean, that component is, we're talking to heart-centered beings moving through time and space, and we all are. I love in Chinese medicine that there isn't a word for mind-body medicine. It's all heart-centered. The emperor, the empress is at the key. It's like the pinnacle of health is your heart. So tending to the heart, I think these times really call for it. And I love that we have a conversation on the emperor's medicine. I want to get into the other two causes of illness in Chinese medicine, but then return to the emotions, because I want to do that fair justice here on, because people don't really understand. We're not taught about how to have natural emotions. We're taught to suppress certain ones are, more agreeable, and certain ones we're supposed to stay away from. And we put all kinds of stories around them other than they are just like clouds passing in the sky. And we have a lot more direction on how they impact us, let's say. So first, let's back up to the kind of that meta level of the causes of illness. So emotions is one of those big categories. And you had two other.
So the first is considered external causes of disease, right? So viruses, bacteria, things that come in from the external environment and mess up our internal environment. And so in Chinese medicine, colds, flus, infections like that fall into this category. And we in Chinese medicine, we categorize them like based on how they present. So it's not necessarily so important to know that like whether you have this type of virus or that type of virus. It's more like, well, is it a hot cold? Is it a cold cold? Is it a damp cold or a dry cold? Right? What kind of havoc is it wreaking in the body? Do you have the high fever and the yellow phlegm, or do you have the chills and the nausea? How is it presenting in you? Because we're going to treat with opposites in our medicinals that to restore balance to the body. So category one is the external causes of disease. Category two is considered miscellaneous, right? Which is the stuff we do every day, lifestyle and diet, and the random stuff that happens. So like you get in an accident, you get hit by a bus or bit by a snake. That's sort of a random thing that happens, but it's also the things that we do every day, right? It's what are we eating on a regular basis? It's how are we moving our bodies on a regular basis, right? These kinds of these lifestyle, what we would consider lifestyle habits, or our daily routines. So that is, and I've seen research show that's about 40% determinative for our health. If genetics are a piece of it, and in Chinese medicine, like we certainly think about genetics have a factor too, that our constitution, what we came in with, it determines kind of like how vulnerable we are going to be to disease throughout our lives. And this is sort of a kind of like our genetic endowment that includes our strengths and weaknesses as people and our personalities and like our natural gifts, the things that we just happen to be good at, or and also kind of which systems tend to be strongest. We get that from our parents, right? That's considered our constitutional jing, the sand in our hourglass, as it were, that functions as a reserve. And we can actually create more jing postnatally through the production of high quality qi and blood, qi being our vital life essence, and blood with a capital B is kind of that which nourishes. And so we can actually, if we have this kind of supply that we come in with at birth, we can actually stockpile more good stuff, that on top of it, when we're eating really nourishing food that we're digesting well, right? Because we're not what we eat, we're what we digest, and that's not the same thing. And also making sure that we are, again, living in balance. We're getting enough sleep. We're not doing too much, right? We're not burning the candle at both ends. Because when we are, then we will start sort of dipping into that reserve supply of Jing that again has been with us since birth. And that's what should be drawn on for emergencies only. But a lot of us kind of live in a state of depletion and kind of get old before our time, right? So the difference between somebody who, there's a lot of different ways to look 50, right? Or 80 or 100. And this is going to depend on how much qi and blood someone is able to pack on top of their Jing. So we've got external causes of disease. We've got the lifestyle and diet stuff, like the random things that get thrown in there. And then the third cause of disease is the internal causes of disease, which are the emotions. Chinese medicine enumerates 7 of them, but really it doesn't so much matter how we want to define them. Really going to extremes in the emotions or repressing them and having them stick around. Like basically we repress them when we spin a story around them about why they need to keep existing or when we don't allow for the full expression. So in our culture, of course, if you're a guy, really you're only allowed to get angry, like you're allowed to be like either joyful or angry. That's about it, right? Like forget fear, forget worried, forget, forget sad, like all that stuff is too vulnerable. It's too yin. And really, who wants to go there, right? Who wants to go to those places that feel sad, that feel vulnerable, that feel that move us downward and inward. And in Chinese medicine, the emotions have a trajectory associated with them, and that trajectory exists for a reason. So when we're angry, it helps us get big, right? That directionality of anger moves upward and outward. And so we stand up for ourselves, we stand up for our rights. We somebody else is being wronged, we get big, we defend them. That is the purpose of anger, right? Is to help us in that way. And yet if we spend our whole lives angry, the energy moves up too much, and we risk high blood pressure, we risk stroke, we risk these things that move up along the gallbladder channel and affect the brain, those kinds of things. So we can't be all moving in the same directions. Otherwise, sadness, for example, moves downward and inward. And so if we're moving downward and inward, we're going to close off the chest. We're going to close off the heart. We're not going to feel particularly energized by life. We're not going to be inspired, right? Taking in new energy into the lungs. And that's sort of like, it's a very yin emotion. It takes us inward into ourselves and prevents us from being able to connect to the present moment. And so it is important to digest our emotions, to metabolize them, as we can't just have food sitting around in our stomachs forever. We eventually have to process it and let it go. And if we don't, if it just kind of hangs out in the body, that's its own problem. And so, emotions all have to be dealt with and integrated by the heart into this lens that we look through our consciousness.
Yeah, I love it. Because that's never really, people don't put that together. And it's just built into the system with the energetic movement. So having people in touch with themselves and actually feeling the emotions, right? Like we try to bypass some of the sadness or the grief. Like our culture does not do grief or loss at all. It's like,
no,
just pretend it didn't exist, or time will fill that up for you. But I don't know about you, but in our practice here, I see 70 and 80-year-olds that haven't processed emotions from their childhood. And we wonder, well, how did you get into this chronic disease state? And, things that come up on the table, I'm always humbled and honored that, we've created a safe space for folks where they allow them out. And,
yes.
If you don't have any room in your life for that to happen, and you're wondering, can I take another medicine or even an herb for, I don't feel good, or I'm depressed, or I have anxiety. It's still not truly getting to the root imbalance of, it could have been decades ago that something got suppressed or didn't get processed or got stuck in the cellular matrix of you and the energetics of you. And so I love that discussion of, it's just built in on energetics here, in that all of these things have a different energy, different flow, up, down, in, out. And it's just built into this beautiful system.
It's just natural, right? And it's very unnatural to be moving at a speed where we're not even in touch with our humanity, right? Like people barely, I think a lot of my clients, they barely feel like they have enough time to go to the bathroom when they have to. It's like it's just like much less processing layers of emotion. And it's the kind of thing where it's like it's not going to be culturally supported, and therefore it has to be claimed. And I find that the best way to not have to continually claim it over and over again is to have a practice where it's where you automate a lot of these basics that you want to make sure you have down, right? So having a bedtime, having a meditation time where it's like you don't have to wonder, where am I going to do this, when am I going to do this, how am I going to do this? It's just an automated thing that happens, just like your morning coffee or whatever it is. It's something that you don't have to think about, because really it's until something is until you have room for it in your life, you're not really prioritizing it. And so and a lot of people don't feel like they need to prioritize the things that go on in their hearts and minds. And then, is it any wonder that anxiety medication is the number one prescribed medication, right? That it's one of the most prevalent things in our culture, and it's and there's plenty to be anxious about. Don't get me wrong, but finding a way again also to tapping into something, that figuring out like, what can I believe in that will allow me to deal with the injustice, the stress, the uncertainty, like all of that that's around us all the time, because it's a way that it's a factor in our environment, just like air pollution, right? Just like a toxin in our water, we have to filter out the bad stuff, right? We have to filter things out in order for them not to be toxic to us. And it's the same thing with with what's going on in our world, and finding having time and space to digest it and metabolize it, so that it is not harassing your heart, so it's not interfering with your ability to sleep, so it's not so it's not actually anything that takes you out of the present moment, right? Is like really we can consider some amount of small t trauma, right? Anything that is undigested stuff from the past that is coloring the present. It's like it's impeding our ability to see clearly, and therefore it makes us much more reactive rather than responsive. It means that we're acting from past conditioning instead of present circumstances.
Why do you think, it really does seem we're at one of those crossroads as a global population. And that component of the harried nature, I think I've heard, lots of discussions around, this time of COVID has been really refreshing for a lot of people, because it's given them, obviously there's been a lot of negatives with it as well, but it has also given some time for pause to reprioritize, take some of that much needed downtime to really question what fills their cup, what does bring them nourishment, what is fulfilling, what brings them joy. How do we encourage that? You mentioned like we've got to claim that space. If you're not making the time for it, it's not a priority. And I can hear just a couple voices that come out of my head of like, well, and I'm full on board in agreement with you, Brodie. But like some of the objections that I've heard from patients and clients around, well, I just don't have the time, and I have, all of these needs that have to happen. But it's almost as if it's like you've got to have a step of faith to actually institute the time, because you become way more efficient with these practices on board. So this might be a good lead into the Qigong component, but also the way that you habituate your day or structure it in. Like for me, I know if I don't put it on the calendar, it's not going to happen. Like,
exactly.
I used to think like, oh, I'd practice guitar. Like, well, I have the guitar sitting out there, so like, I'll just pick it up in between things. It's like, no, if I don't schedule it, if I don't schedule my meditation, and it's not that you have to get so strict or structured on it, but it has to be there. You have to hold a place. So how do you work with folks, and why isn't it happening more frequently?
Yeah, well, I think there's usually when people are so overwhelmed, they don't have the energy it takes to create a new routine, right? And so usually the first thing that I'll encourage people to do is subtract. It's like, well, what are you doing that you could maybe stop doing? That isn't necessarily fulfilling or productive. Is it scrolling Instagram? Is it, like numbing out in front of Netflix at night? Now, some of that might be, we can kind of think about it as like, oh, well, no, this is how I rest, or this is how I relax. But I can tell you that trading in 10 minutes of mindless scrolling the internet for 10 minutes of conscious breathing or meditation or journaling or petting your cat with love, or like whatever it is that helps you connect to the present moment, to yourself, to inventory what's going on, to what the right action is in the moment. This is another Chinese medicine concept called Wu Wei, right? That sort of right thing right now, like what is called for, right? That most of us can find time in our day that isn't actually productive, but that we are busy doing things, right? And I basically, so I usually encourage people to start there, is like, what can you subtract or what can you let go of? And some of that is maybe an assumption that you're making. Like, is it true that you have to cook dinner for everyone? Like, could the kids step up and do their own dishes? Could could there be a reprioritization either in your professional or your personal life where it's not all on you? Like that. And so maybe that requires having a conscious conversation with somebody, and redistributing the load or question. And I think more often than not, it requires people looking at the expectations they have for themselves, right? Because a lot of times what holds us back from doing the things that we really need to do to take care of ourselves is some notion that we have to be perfect. Some notion that we are somehow like taking care of ourselves is somehow not as important as taking care of these other people, right? So because I work with a lot of people who have very high expectations for themselves, or who just care, like they're givers, right? They care a lot about the people in their lives, and they assume that it's a zero-sum game, right? Like if they take care of themselves, it means that they're not going to be as good at taking care of other people. And that is a fallacy I like to help people unravel, right? Are you able, when you are fried, when you have zero space and time in your life, let's just imagine that you like have a full plate and it just got a little bit more full. What happens in your body? Do you expand or contract? Right? Like really, like what, take that on viscerally right now, if you're listening to this. Now, what is it like if you were to breathe some space into your body? What is it like if you were to sync your energy, right? Because that's the other thing that happens when energy stops moving, it tends to go up, right? We get the tight neck and shoulders, we get the headaches, we get the tightness in our gut, we get the diaphragm stiffness, we get the breath gets shallow, it's all up here, right? Just letting it sink down. 1 minute of conscious breathing can do that for you, right? And that allows you, again, like if we're way up here, how easy is it to be a loving, caring, compassionate person for those around you, compared to if you actually have your needs met, right? If you actually have spent time doing something joyful, if you've actually moved your body, if you've, like whatever it is that for you is one of those non-negotiables, right? We all kind of have a different, what we think of as in the habit change world as a keystone habit, the thing that's going to make everything else better. So for me, it's getting good sleep, right? When I get good sleep, it's easier for me to get up and meditate, to do my exercise that I like to do in the morning. But like first thing, if I move my body, I'm going to have a way better day, right? If I am sleep deprived, I'm going to crave sugar and caffeine. I'm going to be tempted to overeat. I'm going to feel sluggish. I'm going to not want to work out. I'm going to not, it's like, it's like a whole cascade of like how the day could go. So I know that for me, putting myself to bed at the same time every night so that my body is in that rhythm, it's like I feel like I'm 90, but it's really important because it means that during the day I don't feel like I'm 90, right? I feel like I'm vital and I have enough energy to show up for my clients and my family, right? And so maybe but for other people it might be exercise, or for other people it might be not eating sugar, or like there's different things that help us feel in alignment with other healthy habits that are that we can think about. And then really it's like I am a big fan of, like, just as you said, if it's not in your calendar, it's really unlikely. It's basically just a soft intention, right? If it's scheduled, it is far more likely to be real. Yeah. And this was coined by one of my clients in one of my habit change groups. Mornings are mine. You know, like that, like, so if mornings are mine, if I can do a few minutes of meditation or journaling, if I can do my half hour on my yoga mat or with my weights or whatever it is, if I can make myself a healthy breakfast, if I can ask myself 3 questions of like, what needs to get the juice today? Like, what am I aiming my arrow at today? You know, because if you're not aiming, you're not going to hit your target. And so figuring out like, what is the best use of my limited vital energy? It's not about willpower. It's about habit, right? It's about having the right stuff on autopilot, because then it's effortless, right? Then it's self-perpetuating and you don't have to think about it. And so the more that can happen in the morning when you have, before willpower wears out, because it is not a renewable resource, it's something that gets depleted with every decision we have to make, right? That's why, Barack Obama wore the same color suits all the time, right? It's why people have these, all the biohackers, like they listen to the same song when they, get in the zone. And it's like, it's the not having to think about the stuff that doesn't matter. So just make it easy on yourself. All the habits that you want to work into your life that is the foundation of healthy living and healthy aging, that's going to set you up for being an awesomely vital and vibrant 90 or 100-year-old, that all of that, it's like, if you can wedge that into 45 minutes in the morning, it's like, that is really possible for most of us. And for some people, okay, maybe it's not the morning, maybe it's another time, but figuring out when can it be this sacred commitment to yourself that will allow you to do your work and show up for the people that you love in the best possible way. And so I usually encourage people to claim that time before the world starts eating away at your priorities, before the internet tells you what to pay attention to instead.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, do not get in your email inbox first thing in the morning. And you, by setting that up like that, I mean, that just sounds like way more fun, even with you
right? Well, it's like, in Ayurveda, there's the notion of health is being seated in oneself. Right. I love that idea, right? It's your life is an expression of yourself. It's not the world dictating priorities where you're just in this mad response pattern to all of it. And of course, in Chinese medicine, health is about is preserving this balance of yin and yang, right? And yin and yang in all of the different systems in our lives. And it doesn't mean that every day looks the same, right? As I mentioned, we change with the seasons. And so that certain times in your life there, you're working on a big project that like there's work is going to get more of the juice, right? And other times play and leisure is going to get more of the juice. And other times you might be training for that marathon. And so exercise is going to get more of it. But it's like you can allocate the pieces of your life pie any way you want, right? And some of us are more yang or more yin by nature. And so it's not, again, about us all looking the same, but it's about us recognizing what we need in order to balance the scales, right? And so if we are feeling burned out and lethargic and tired, we might feel like, like yang is the last thing, like you want me to exercise, you want me to move. And I would say from there, taking one small step in the direction of better. So maybe it's not doing something big and dramatic. Maybe it's not going to the gym for an hour. Maybe it's taking a 5-minute walk every morning, right? Like making your habit change non-negotiable, but making it modular and starting really, really small. So if you're starting a meditation practice, 1 minute, right? There's no way you don't have 1 minute. If you're for a breathing practice, same deal. It's like, 1 minute of conscious breathing can change your whole day. And it's like, none of us have an excuse for not doing it, right? It's like, it's the kind of thing where it's like, if you want to feel different in your body, you can modulate your nervous system very easily with the breath. And it's like, it doesn't have to be more complicated, right? Than taking in and letting go. And so if we're emphasizing the inhale, we're increasing our yang energy. If we're exercising the exhale, we are letting go and we are dropping down into yin, parasympathetic mode. And so it's, helping people work with their breath. It's I think that's almost even more important than things like exercise a lot of times, for both mood as well as how much energy and clarity do you have in a given moment.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So let's give them let's give a little example. You said you had some
Sure.
Qigong maybe to share with our listeners and viewers.
Yeah. So one of my favorite Qigong practices that people can usually feel right away makes a big difference. Usually I like to demonstrate it standing, but I don't want to mess up our cameras here. So we can do it sitting together. And basically it's I'll invite anyone who is like driving a car, maybe don't follow along right now, but otherwise, if you have a moment and you'd like to follow along, I'd like you to encourage, if you're sitting, maybe come to the edge of your chair. So your sitting bones are touching the chair, but you're not slumping in your lower back. You've got your spine allowing itself to follow its natural curves. You can feel like the top of your head is lifting up towards the sky, and open your palms forward. And as we inhale, we're going to raise the arms up. So inhaling, you're going to float the arms up overhead. You're going to connect with the sky. Briefly pause the breath, and then exhaling, the palms turn towards you, and like you've got magnets in your hands, we're going to be guiding the energy down the front of the body, feeling a connection between the palms of the hands and the front of the body, moving that energy down to just below the navel, and then repeating, inhaling as we come up, inhaling, moving with your breath at your pace, floating up, and exhaling, descending the palms, letting the breath come low in the belly as we come down. Inhaling, letting the low belly expand outward as we bring the arms up overhead. Exhale, the belly button moves towards the spine. We guide the energy down. We're bringing down the heavens. So we just did 3 breaths together, right? Does that feel a little different in your body?
Oh, so different. I just like expansive, relaxed, lighter. I love that.
That's one that you can do anytime, any day. And I usually encourage people to do it 9 times. It's super simple. It takes usually, a minute or 2 to do. And as we're doing it, we're increasing our circulation, right? We're increasing our qi and blood flow throughout our bodies. At the same time, right, we're bringing energy to this lower dantian, this lower elixir field, right? This idea of the space between just one hand's breadth below the navel, which is what we think of as that space between heaven and earth, where humanity lives, and where our center of gravity is, where in martial arts, where our power comes from, right, is from the hara or the tanden or the lower dantian, however you want to refer to it. And that is, we're taking this yang, right, the busy, the active, the moving, the hot, and we're basically we're calming it. We're bringing it all down into this domain of yin, the lower body, the grounded, the stable, the centered, and we're unifying those, right? And so coming to our center, our literal center of our low torso, it puts us in touch with our power, with our qi, in a way that allows us to move through the world more calmly, more confidently, and literally from a grounded, centered place. So it's a super simple practice. I actually have it on my website as a free download. If people head over to brodiewelch.com, that is available, and it is the Calm and Centered bundle.
Awesome. And I'm going to put that link in the show notes. So we'll
great.
People there. That's great. Thank you for that gift.
Sure.
Everybody, this one, while it looks simple, this one is like, what a gift. Like, just take the moment, even set a timer. If you're doing a lot of Zoom stuff or still working from home, put this on as an alarm and give yourself that gift. That took, literally 9 of those 1 to 3 minutes, depending on what your rhythm is in that. And that is a game changer. Like, it puts you in there, it puts you back in your vessel. And that's what we need. We need you in there. We need you
exactly. We do. We need everyone there.
Yes.
The component of that, Qigong, we're unifying the breath with the movement. And the other piece is the intentionality. And so if you want to take it to the next level, you can do things like feeling the bottoms of your feet and imagining that you have roots that go down at least 6 feet into the earth. And that there's this point right between the second and third toes at the ball of the feet. that we call the bubbling spring point. And you can imagine the energy from the earth coming up through those roots, coming up into the bubbling spring point, coming up your inner legs to your low belly. And that in nice soft knees, breathing into the low belly, you are connected to the earth and you're connected to the sky. And you are in this place of feeling supported by the planet and feeling supported by the air that you're breathing. And it's one of those ways that, again, union with nature brings you into union with yourself, which allows you to connect to others.
Oh, I love it. You know, in the last couple minutes of the show, anything else that you would really like to impart in the last few here?
Well, I think that I'd love for people to consider what brings you joy, right? Because that is a question that we're not encouraged to think about. I'd love for people to think about what you can subtract, right? Because again, it's that taking care of ourselves is not something to be added to the to-do list, right? It's so much. It's like letting go of the things that we either think we should be doing, where we can question our story about whether or not that's true, right? Allowing ourselves to let go of what no longer serves, and to maybe find the time within the time, right? Like where are we not really fully present because we're multitasking or we're doing these things that don't really add to our energy, right? So like a little energy inventory. What is depleting to you? Maybe what is depleting to you as far as relationships go? Like maybe there's somebody in your life that just constantly feels like a drag, or maybe there's something that like you snack on that you're like, yeah, it never really feels great, like that is just sort of that you recognize like, yeah, I could probably part with that. And what could you substitute? Like what could be a more nourishing thing instead, right? That like, who are the people in your life who you really get energy from, and you really, who really add to your sense of vitality? And what do you feel really great consuming, where like when you eat it, your body's like every cell is rejoicing that you've given that to yourself. Because and again, that can change with the season. So thinking about like what is truly nourishing for you. And then, so I think that those questions, along with just any time that you feel overwhelmed, lost, confused, taking a time to close your eyes, check in with your breath, and ask yourself, what do I need right now? Right? Because you have an internal teacher, you have wisdom within you, and being able to tune into yourself is what I always try to do as a clinician and as a coach, because it's going to vary from moment to moment, depending on who you are. What's going to be medicine for one person can be poison for another. And so really, if I have any take home messages for anyone else today, it's to be your own healer. And part of that requires being in touch with yourself as often as possible, preferably moment to moment. Of course, then you would be the wandering sage, but at least getting in touch with that more often, setting a timer on your phone to just ask myself, what do I need right now, a few times a day, or to drop into breath as a portal to connection with yourself. So I think that's really, and really the final thing I would like to say is that you have the right to take care of yourself, right? Even before the work is done and everyone else's needs are met. And I don't think people hear that enough. It's not selfish. It's absolutely essential.
Hear, hear. It is essential and non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Folks, if you enjoyed the show, please think of 2 or 3 friends, family members to share this with. There was really practical take-home advice and information in here. I'm going to put Brodie's contact information in the show notes. I really appreciate all of you out there. I want this to be the best year yet for you and your families and your communities, with more love and joy and intention. So thanks for tuning in. This is What the Health. We are here on the Contact Talk Radio Tuesdays from 2 to 3. We will see you next week. Thanks for tuning in.